What's up? Okay, so I just got done recording a video for the Doctor Who channel that I have about my thoughts on the Doctor Who Virgin New Adventures book range. And then I thought, why not do a similar video for the main channel? So yeah, this video is basically just me having a little chat about a handful of books that are non-Doctor Who related that I really like, basically. This is completely unscripted. It'd probably be a bit of a rambly video, but I got nothing else to put up. So yeah, here's the video for today, guys. Basically I got 5 books in my pile here, but really the video is going to be sort of 3 sections because 3 of those books make up a trilogy, so that's kind of going to be all discussed in one part. To start off with, let's go with 1984 by George Orwell, also known as Eric Arthur Blair. So for a good few years, basically, I've gradually seen, read and listened to a lot of other fiction that's quite clearly taken inspiration from this book. The Divergent series is dystopian, obviously, which I read when I was like a teenager. Kind of embarrassing admitting that I've read Divergent, but you know. Also a Doctor Who audio, The Natural History of Fear. It's an 8th Doctor story. Is blatantly a 1984-esque dystopian story, but it kind of goes in a different direction with a sci-fi twist. And yeah, basically this time last year, so summer 2020, I decided, what the fuck? This is one of the most famous pieces of classic literature, I'm going to pick it up. Basically, while it isn't the first dystopian story ever created, obviously, it's probably the most famous dystopian future novel. I don't really know what I was expecting going into it, but I did come out thoroughly enjoying it. Also fucking terrified now, but did enjoy it. Yeah, if you basically want a rundown, it's 1984, it's dystopian novel. It's obviously set in 1984, but it was published in 1949. Yeah, it's basically some kind of undisclosed World War-like event that fucked up the world at one point. I think it's like an alternate timeline where like World War II took a different course and stuff happened. Similar to the Fallout games, really. Except in this, the world didn't get nuked to oblivion, it just got divided up and enslaved by an unforgiving totalitarian government. Well, given the choice, I know which universe I prefer to live in. Time to start collecting bottle caps, the nukes are coming. Yeah, given the fact that I just implied I'd rather live in the Fallout universe where the world's been nuked to oblivion and it's just like remnants of civilization, that kind of gives you an idea just how horrible the government is in this story. The whole fucking society in general is fucked. There's no salvaging it at this point. The human race might as well go extinct given the state it's in this book. Yeah, there's basically no freedom to any of the citizens. The government rules the world with no regard for anything but themselves. And yeah, the whole society is just gradually getting worse and worse until everyone's gonna be fucking miserable until the extinction of the species, pretty much. Not gonna lie, it was kind of scary just how much it hit home reading this in 2020. Not to say there's not a lot of parallels between the Big Brother party in 1984 and the current world state of affairs. I'm just saying we're almost certainly fucking screwed in the future. If not from climate change or war, then from something like this happening. Yeah, I won't go too much into detail on the story and everything. It's quite long and detailed in a lot of places, and yeah. It's basically this one character, Winston, having a love affair with this other character, and basically love, sex and relationships are one of the many things that the government has outright just outlawed in this society, pretty much. Yeah, there's a lot of horrible shit put in place by the government that is just commonplace for people in this novel, basically. It's not a world I like to live in, and yeah, it's pretty fucking horrifying. But it also makes for a really tense and interesting read, I gotta say. Being a dystopian future type story, it does have a lot of political basis, which I'm like one of the most uninterested in political based things that you could get. While I don't care for that sort of thing in real life, putting it in the context of this book, it surprisingly manages to become kind of interesting. While it's not something I consider having any kind of interest in, it works for this. And yeah, I'd recommend going to check it out, even, you know, if you're not much of a book reader. It's one of the most famous books of all time. It is really interesting, even if it's not really a sort of thing. I'd recommend it, if for nothing else, then for the fact that you can say you've read 1984. And yeah. Next one, it's quite a far cry from one of the most famous books ever written. Now we're going for a very niche book from about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's called On the Edge of Gone. I'm not sure why the text is so big. They could have made this half the thickness if they made the text smaller. But what the hell. So yeah, this is a book with a fair bit going on, not gonna lie. Basically, it's set about 20 odd years in the future at the time that it was published. It's basically an apocalypse story. The world's going to be hit by a comet, and there's people living in underground shelters, but there's also luckier people that get to be in these spaceships that just fuck off away from Earth and just go to start new lives on other planets eventually. And yeah, there's one of these ships left on Earth that's kind of been kept secret, and basically the main character is this autistic teenage girl. That's the main reason I picked it up. Just felt like reading something with some good rep in it for once. And yeah, it's from her perspective, her trying to get her and what's left of her family onto this ship when it's basically an impossibility of getting a place on the ship by this point, given a lot of the circumstances in the story. And yeah, it's a very enjoyable read, surprisingly relatable on a lot of counts as well. Although I guess that's kind of to be expected. I mean, if you're autistic, reading a book with an autistic protagonist, you're bound to relate to at least something, you know? It's kind of slow-paced in a lot of places. It does tend to have a bit more of a focus on the autism rep than it does with the actual plot at times, but I think it's pretty passable at least. I mean, I have kind of low standards, so I just suck up anything that I feel any kind of enjoyment to, so yeah. This sentence is trailing off, so I'm gonna start a new one. I'm kind of surprised just how invested I got in this. I read it all the way through 3 times by this point. Also a nice bit of unexpected transgender representation with the main character's sister in this. So yeah, that was unexpected. Nice bit of queer rep in there as well as a couple of other like little minor references to some other LGBT characters as well. So that's nice. Also quite unique in that it's set in Amsterdam as well, so it's in the Netherlands. The author is autistic as well and from Amsterdam, so it's nice that she writes about her country and like that city in particular. There's really not a lot of fiction in general that's set in that country, you know. A lot of countries around that area, especially, like a lot of fiction now is set in like England or America and stuff. So it's nice to read something with a different setting for once as well. Yeah, overall quite refreshing with a lot of good things that I like in it. I'm gonna admit the last time I ever cried, which was a few years ago, was after getting through the first 14 chapters of this. Gonna admit that, I don't care if I get hate for it. Flack or moaned at or whatever happens when you admit your emotions as a male on the internet, I don't know. Yeah, really enjoy it if you want to read a book with an autistic protagonist, and if you're into all the other stuff that's in there as well, then and it's just a nice little sci-fi story on top of that, so pretty enjoyable. For a time it was my favourite book until the next stuff that I'm going to talk about. So next up, basically my favourite written fiction of all time, so far anyway, the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer. So there's a bit of a story behind me getting into this. The story begins October, basically Halloween night of 2019. I sit down with my mum to watch the 2011 remake of The Thing. I've not seen the 1982 version, I've only seen the 2011 remake, which is vastly inferior, I understand that. But it's just like a nice little thing to sit down and watch on Halloween night. So we did that, and then a few months later I saw a video that discussed the controversy behind the CGI replacement of the practical effects in said remake of The Thing. So I watched the video, and about halfway through they briefly brought up a little niche film that kind of went forgotten called Annihilation, and they had a clip of the bear scene in the cabin. I was instantly intrigued by this scene, so I looked up the film and I instantly asked my mum if I could get it on DVD. This was back when I didn't have my own bank account because, yeah, I take things very slowly and I'm not very well versed in the ways of living in the world, basically. So yeah, I got the film on DVD in February 2020, exactly 2 years after it first released in cinemas, and I bloody loved the film. And then in summer of that year, I went to Waterstones and picked up the book. Waterstones is a bookshop in the town where I live. Fun fact, I picked up 1984 and Annihilation on the same day at the same time, so that's a fun fact for you. But yeah, I picked up the first book in the book trilogy because I found out that Annihilation was adapted from a book and I was interested to see because I kind of like reading. So yeah, the film honestly captivated me so much of how unique and weird it was. Loved it, it's my favourite film, and the same thing happened with the book. It's now my favourite book. I'm not sure which I prefer, the book or the film. I say they're both pretty much on the same level, but for slightly different reasons. The film isn't really much like the book. It's like a very loose adaptation, and if I'm going to be honest, that's probably the only way that they ever could have done it, because if you read this, you'll know it would be pretty much impossible to adapt into a visual medium. I'm not going to try and spoil too much for the entire trilogy in general. Yeah, it's about this weird, possibly alien phenomena that happens. In the film, it's made really clear that it's this weird alien, but in the books, it's left really ambiguous. Like, it could be an alien, it could be like a supernatural effect of some kind, or it could be like, it could be anything really that's just weird and fucking around with things. I'm pretty sure at a point in the book, it's like very subtly implied that it's some kind of possibly malfunctioning technology from a dying alien planet that arrived on Earth and is now doing these things for undisclosed reasons. But yeah, it's never really explained fully. And yeah, it's basically about this place called Area X, which is most likely in the south of Florida, near the coastline. It's basically this sealed off wilderness area, and yeah, anything inside is just mutating to extreme levels, like on a mad scale pretty much. Like all living things, all DNA just gets mutated within this zone, and that plot point is shared between the books and the films. But in the books, there's also this, like, you really gotta, honestly, I'm not even gonna try and explain it, you've gotta read it to understand it. It is one of the weirdest existential experiences I've ever had. Anything I can say about it will not do it justice, basically. It's a unique and unforgettable experience, you gotta read it, trust me. Even if you just read the first one, but even that is, you know, a good experience. I would recommend checking out the second two as well, they're a bit different, but if you really only have to read one, definitely read Annihilation. It's one of those series, overall, the whole Southern Reach trilogy is one of the series where you do get some answers, but for every answer you get, there's about 4 more mysteries that crop up that never get explicitly answered. You've really got to like use your imagination and just like, you basically got to take all the little hints and clues that are sprinkled throughout the books and basically just put them together and make up your own explanation in your head, pretty much. That's if you do want an explanation at all. If you want it to remain a complete mystery and never figure it out, then that's fine too. So the first book is from the perspective of the unnamed biologist on the expedition into Area X. The whole book is actually like her diary of her experiences on the expedition, and it's a wild ride. I really recommend it. The second book is third person. It's a more traditional type of book. It's like a spy espionage kind of book. It's set back at the Southern Reach, so outside Area X. It's like the inner workings of the organisation behind these expeditions. And it's still really cool. It's kind of slow paced in a lot of places. I think it does pick up as it goes on. And there's some really interesting stuff in there. I recommend it. And then Acceptance finishes it off by basically telling 3 different narratives at once. There's stuff in the past that deals with the origins of Area X while not giving away the actual explanation as to what the thing is. There's like a million more weird, disturbing mysteries that are presented in it that don't get explained, which I love. There's stuff about the psychologist from the first book who was actually the director of the Southern Reach organisation, who was travelling incognito on the 12th expedition. You get a lot of backstory about her and her relationship with the lighthouse keeper, who's also a major player in the creation of Area X, albeit unwillingly. And then there's the stuff in the present day with the characters established in the second book, Authority. I forgot to mention that the second book's called Authority, sorry about that. Characters from that book that are established who also have to venture into Area X, and yeah, the ending is, it's ambivalent, it's sad, it's bittersweet, it has a sort of hopeful optimism to it. I really can't explain it. This whole trilogy in general just blows my fucking mind. It's amazing, it really is. You've really got to read it. Maybe I'll do a full video sometime going into, like, in depth of the Southern Reach series, including the film adaptation. Yeah, but for now, I think I'm going to leave it at that because I've been rambling for a while. To summarise, that was 5 books, basically, that I've been really enjoying for the last couple of years. 1984 was a brilliantly haunting and disturbing vision of how bad authoritarian governments can get and how much they can destroy society and make your life miserable. Kind of weird that I find that enjoyable to read, but I'm weird in general. On the Edge of Gone, brilliant little sci-fi story with an autistic protagonist that I quite related to, that also has some nice other aspects to it that I appreciate. And the monumental Southern Reach trilogy, which I didn't think would ever be topped. I like this series so much, I have a tattoo session booked in October, and the design is going to be based off this trilogy. That's how much I love that series. If you were kind enough to listen to me rambling about some books that I like for like 15 minutes, then I really appreciate it. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Bye for now everyone, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in whatever's up next. Bye!